Hi, I'm Rob Salerno,
And I'm Watson.
and we're here at Ryerson University outside the proudTOvote debate. Olivia Chow and John Tory, mayoral candidates, just debated LGBT issues. Now, HG, what did you think was the knockout line of the evening?
I would have to go with Olivia Chow's closing. She made the very smart choice to stand where John Tory was actually just sitting down throughout his closing statement. And, to be honest, and we talked about this before the cameras were on, I'm having a hard time remembering what John Tory closed on. But we got from Olivia this really amazing speech about love and courage and understanding. And she really got the crowd going there right at the end, which I think for her is so important because she's been accused of not being as smooth talking as some other politicians during this race. So for her to have that moment there right at the end is maybe a step in changing people's minds a little bit.
Yeah, I think, actually, John Tory's closing statement was kind of an anecdote about his first visit to Woody's. He was talking about how he thought it was important to reach out and to get yourself educated, and his steps in doing that to become an LGBT ally. And I think this actually spoke to sort of the different styles that Chow and Tory took during the debate. Tory focused a lot on personal anecdotes about his own evolution on LGBT rights, on meeting members of the gay community, whereas Chow talked a little bit more about her actual record as a councillor, as a member of parliament, fighting for LGBT rights and helping members of the community specifically.
In Tory's defense, a little bit, I think Olivia had an opportunity to be much more engaged with those issues right at the beginning of her career. As she mentioned, she was a TDSB trustee right after the bathhouse raids. She was dealing with getting anti-homophobic literature in schools and getting condoms in schools. And while Tory's had a storied political career, I don't know necessarily that he would have been able to get into that same grassroots thing. So I do commend him for really pulling on those personal anecdotes. But yeah, in terms of a debate, did you feel like this was maybe the most civil debate, except for one part, which we'll talk about in a second? But I just felt, based on everything I've seen, it was almost like they were just agreeing on the same policies in some places.
Actually, I very much agree with that. Yes, this was a very, very calm debate, very civil debate. They did seem to agree on broad strokes about what's important to the LGBT community, inclusion, equality, those sorts of things. And it comes down to, I think, the substance of what they were saying. And it seems like Chow is trying to run on her record in elected office here. But let's talk about the actual issue where there was some substantive disagreement, and this is on the issue of Pride funding. Earlier today, John Tory made the first statement about Pride funding that he's made since announcing his campaign. He said that if Quia is allowed to march in the Pride parade, that Pride should not get funding from the city, and if need be, he would change city funding rules to specifically ban the term Israeli apartheid, given that the city solicitor has said that that's not hate speech. So how did you think Tory handled that?
I am still very surprised that this is even an issue, because I think anyone that's been covering or watching Toronto politics for the last year kind of thought this was a dead issue. I mean, the Quia marched in the parade. I was out in the parade covering it that day. I saw one protester. That was it. I also saw many Jewish organizations walking in the parade.
Well, never mind just 1 year. This is an issue that we've been debating year after year since before Ford was in office.
And the answer is always the same. I have to say, I am concerned that he says he would change the human rights policy. And the reason for that is, as you had asked him in the scrum, that there's actual federal laws that support Quia's case. And so if they were to change that HR policy, would he be setting up the city for a possible charter challenge? That's something that could be quite expensive going down in the years, and I'd be very concerned about that.
It seemed like the room, more or less, was not on Tory's side on this issue.
He was getting more claps than I thought. I thought you might get outright booed at the Quia thing, but he was getting that support. People were mostly respectful. I think something to think about is whether this is a divisive issue. And he's spoken a lot about wanting to have one Toronto and not to polarize people. And then he said something that's very polarizing. So I'm curious to see, if it will have an impact on the next couple of polls that will come out. There's just been so much that's happened even in the last week alone.
Yeah, I think what will be really fascinating is what happens in the next poll, because I don't necessarily know that Tory is going to lose a lot of support for this, but if progressives move over to Chow because they are concerned about this issue, we'll see what happens in the next few days as the polls come out.
Do you think that I spoke to Tim McCaskill earlier today, and he said that John Tory has a history of putting his foot in his mouth. Do you think this is like another Toryism? Are we witnessing another Tory public relations mishap? Or?
Well, I don't know who said it first, but people have said Tory has blown bigger leads in less time in past election campaigns. I don't know. I don't know if this is an issue that will galvanize the general public. It seems to be an issue that speaks largely to two very specific communities, to the gay community and to a certain segment of the Jewish community. It's certainly not universally a universal opinion in the Jewish community, but it's something that could galvanize certain segments of the population. Who knows if this is something that will have legs? We'll have to see also how the media handle this over the next couple of days, how the mainstream press deal with this issue. I mean, obviously, we're going to be covering it, and there have been stories, but is this something that's going to dog him over the next few days? Only time will tell.
All right. Well, it was great talking about the debate with you.
Absolutely. Keep checking dailyxtra.com for all of our election coverage, and please do remember to vote October 27th. Thank you.